After some experimentation, I decided to mount the psychoanalyst mode switch and thumb throttle on the right steering arm. This is the result. You can see I've also made provision to mount a camera. That's this bit here, a light, and a mirror. I also made provision to mount my cell phone, another light, a mileage indicator, and a second mirror on the left-hand steering rod. Here's a brief video of the right-hand steering assembly from the front of the bike and the left-hand assembly from the front of the bike. By mounting things in this fashion, I'm able to put all of the controls to hand. Here's another view of the right hand from a little bit different angle. Here you can clearly see the thumb throttle and the mode switch. In order to mount things in this fashion, I had to fabricate a handlebar extension. There are several companies that make these, most notably TerraCycle, and they're nice enough, but didn't really meet my needs, and they were a bit expensive. So I decided instead to fabricate my own. As it turns out, I experimented with this a little bit last night. As it turns out, the inner diameter of this steering tube is right at 3/4 inch. This is a 3/4 inch dowel I had laying around in the shop. And you can see it slides in. It's got a little slop, but not much. And this is a 3/4 inch Schedule 40 PVC pipe. And it slides around. It's quite a bit more slop, but that's something I can fill. This end, I expanded a little bit using a heat gun. This particular one is pretty ugly looking. But the thing of it is this, it'll slide down and slide over the steering bar assembly. And at this point, the thing is pretty stable. I like that. I think that's probably the right way to do it. So I'm going to have to fabricate a piece of this that's actually done right. Cut a section of this bar, fit it tight, so the whole affair will slide down and engage. Here's a brief clip on how I made the steering arm extensions. Schedule 40 PVC pipe, I've cut a couple of 10-inch lengths. It's pretty thick walled. The process is to heat it with a heat gun and then force it over this other handlebar, which is slightly larger than the handlebars on the trike. A pair of gloves will keep you from burning your hands. And the trick to heating this is to go slow. Take your time, heat it evenly, rotate things. Hurrying is not a good plan here. You don't want to burn the tubing. I'll heat about a 2 or 3 inch section of it. The pipe will swell slightly when you heat it, and then eventually it'll get sort of malleable as in a sort of spaghetti way. Since that tubing is pretty thick, it takes a while to heat all the way through. So I just take my time. And it's just now beginning to soften. You really want it pretty soft before you try to work it. And it's Nice not to scorch it, although I don't think the scorching does much harm. Okay, that's fairly malleable. Let's see what happens. Well, it's certainly looking up. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, go on there, go on there, go on there. There we go. Just slide it on, twisting as you go. Try to get everything reasonably straight. Well, that looks pretty good. And let it cool. So that's the process. After it's cooled, I'll go ahead and pull it off. It can be on there pretty firmly, so it may be necessary to pull pretty hard and to hold the tube in a clamp or vice grip or something of that sort. It helps a little bit if you turn it from time to time. As it's cooling, it's already cooled and it's already pretty stuck. So I'll go take that off and make another one. Well, I've made a second tube. I should probably note that getting them off the other handlebar turned out to be a bit of a chore. I had to chuck the handlebar up in a bench vise and then get a pair of locking pliers to twist the tube off. It turns out that it melted the paint on the handlebar, and as a consequence was rather difficult to get off. I don't know if you can see or not, but here's the inside of the tube, and you can see that there are bits of, let's see how to do this, bits of paint. I don't know if you can just see that or not. You see the little red bit? That's the paint from the handlebar. Okay, but it's done. I also bunged up the end quite a bit. You can see where the vice grips chewed things up. But it's done. The reason I made them 10 inches long is not that I need that length, but I knew I would have to trim to get things right. So this one goes here. And you can see I need, maybe 12 millimeters or something like that here. So what I'll do is I'll measure this, fit this, and then trim a little bit at a time until I get a good fit. And then this will help center things. Something like this. And that should work fine. I think, by the way, that the handlebar I used may have not had a constant diameter. Yeah, and it's a little bigger. You can see that this is just a little bit loose. That's all right. I can deal with that. A little heat will shrink it up a little bit because it likes to go back to where it was. So it looks like I've got about the right amount here, and so I just need to take off this last section. So let me mark that and then go saw it off and go from there. Expect to cut this several times before I get it actually right. Because if once I cut it too short, then it is too short. So I've marked it. I'll go cut it. Now it's out on the table saw, actually radial arm saw, and then come back and fit it again. Well, it took a bit of experimentation, but here's what I ended up doing. I've Took the part where I'd expended it a little bit, used a 3/4 inch dowel since the ID of the handlebar is about 3/4 inch. Expanded this to fit over the outside, and then slipped the dowel in and wedged it with a series of toothpicks, actually, driven in to keep everything tight. And that seems to work pretty well. You can see that this one fits particularly well. It's actually fairly firm on there. It will come out, but it does take some amount of effort. I may have to put a set screw or something of that sort in, but I think that this PVC will actually take a thread so long as it's not over tightened. Worst comes to worst, I'll use a hose clamp. So there we are, a place to mount stuff. Okay, so here's what it looks like. You can see the tube coming up, a riser, cross piece. I've got a mirror mounted. And then the cycle analyst should sit right about here. And everything should be just fine. Looks good. Things aren't quite as tight as I would like, so I'm going to use a 1-inch hose clamp to tighten down the PVC onto the handlebar. Well, that's better. PVC will creep, I'm pretty sure. So if I tighten it, then in a day or two, it'll be in good order. Okay, so throttle is okay, the switch is okay, and the cycle analyst can either go here or here or here. I'll have to experiment with that a little bit. One negative is that there's going to be a large collection of wire back here. The other negative that I noted is that the speed sensor is a little short, but I think I can work around that problem. And the length of the cable on the PAS sensor, it's just plainly too short, so I'm going to have to work that out somehow. Now this mob of wire, it's going to have to come down through here somehow, and then down this way. That's going to be a bit tricky. I wonder if I ought to give a thought to mounting the psychoanalyst down lower. Maybe here. I wonder if I could even see it. That would put all the wire underneath, or most of the wire, well, except for these two, underneath this. These two really kind of want to be up where they are. They go directly to the cycle analyst. Let's see, what am I going to have? I'm going to have this wire going down. That's the motor controller. This doesn't go anywhere. This doesn't go anywhere. This is the pass sensor, so that's another wire. That's two. Aux doesn't go anywhere. Throttle will be up. And brake will be 3. So that's 3 wires going down here. I have to think that one through. Let me think about that a little bit. Well, I ended up taking the bike down and checking out various places where the cycle analyst might be mounted. And when it's all said and done, when it's down low, like down in here, you can't see it. Wiring lengths pretty much required that it be up here someplace. And the net of it all is, when it's said and done, that it pretty much has to go right here. So I put it up there, and we'll go ahead and begin to at least temporarily tighten things down. It's going to mean that there's a lot of wire back here. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to handle it, but I'll have to find something because that's pretty much the way it has to be.